By the time most of us reach our mid-30s, the mold has hardened. Our habits, our emotional reflexes, the very lens through which we view the world. It is all largely set in place. Consider this. 95% of who you are today is a ghost of yesterday, a simple, unconscious repetition. The Stoics warned us centuries ago that we become what we repeatedly do. And so, if your days unfold in the same pattern, if your thoughts echo the same refrains, and if your heart feels the same familiar aches, then your future is not a mystery. It is a forecast, already written, unless you dare to change the script. But here is the truth that so few of us ever grasp. You are not a prisoner of your past. You possess the power to remold your mind, to teach yourself to think, feel, and live differently. And when you do, life doesn't just improve, it transforms. Today, we will uncover how to finally take control of the thoughts that shape your world and reshape the destiny they create. If you believe in growth, in freedom, in building a life of purpose, rather than being dragged along by habit, then this journey is for you. And if you wish to continue walking this path of wisdom, consider subscribing, a choice made for yourself, a commitment to seek knowledge, practice self-mastery, and live more intentionally with each passing day. Every morning feels like a fresh beginning, yet most of us unknowingly relive yesterday. The moment your eyes open, the first instinct is to reach for the phone, to scroll through familiar faces, the same arguments, the endless stream of headlines that fill your head with noise before you've even taken a conscious breath. Without thinking, you get out of bed on the same side, drink the same coffee, and drive the same route, encountering the same people who trigger the same emotions. Day after day, the pattern repeats. It feels comfortable, normal, but in truth, it is a program running quietly in the background of your life. As Marcus Aurelius said, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If our thoughts remain unchanged, so does the very essence of who we are. Life becomes predictable, not because the world limits us, but because we live as if yesterday dictates tomorrow. What we call freedom is often an illusion. We say we want to change, to be healthier, happier, freer, but our bodies and minds are stubbornly tethered to the past. You can think of it as a script you never stop performing. The Stoics taught that true freedom is not found in doing whatever you want, but in gaining mastery over yourself. When you repeat the same emotions, the same reactions, the same limiting beliefs, your choices are not choices at all. They are rehearsals. As Carl Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. We call it destiny, when in reality, it is just an unexamined program, one that has us living the same life in slightly different costumes. The danger lies not just in the routine, but in the emotions we attach to it. Every memory carries a feeling, and when you begin your day by recalling problems or disappointments, you instantly drag the past into the present. The mind does not let go easily. It clings to what is known, even if what is known brings you pain. Seneca observed, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." Those fears and sorrows from yesterday no longer exist, yet the imagination paints them so vividly that the body reacts as if they are happening right now. You feel the weight, you relive the sting, and your state of being is once again colored by memories that should have been left behind. We often believe our choices are born of free will. We tell ourselves we are in control. You might wake up with a burning desire for something different, whispering, "Today, I will change." But the conscious mind may want this, while the body remains unconvinced. Your body has been trained by years of repetition, by cycles of emotion etched into its memory. It doesn't listen to what you say you want. It listens to what it has practiced. Think of the body as an old animal, accustomed to a single path through the forest. You can stand at the edge and point toward a new direction, but out of habit, the animal will return to the trail it has always walked. That trail feels safe, even if it leads to pain, stress, or frustration. These are the languages the body speaks fluently. And because the familiar always feels easier than the unknown, the body will pull you back into old patterns, no matter how loudly your mind cries for change. This is why so many of us feel stuck, torn between the life we want and the life we keep repeating. Willpower alone is not enough to overcome what has been wired into you. Years of living the same way create emotional grooves so deep that you slip back into them without thinking. You can swear you'll no longer let fear control you, but the moment life feels uncertain, fear rushes back like an old, unwelcome friend. True freedom, as Epictetus taught, comes when we are no longer slaves to the emotions and habits that bind us. This mastery is not won in a single decision, but through daily practice, by stepping into discomfort again and again until the unfamiliar becomes the new familiar. This is why so many wait for a crisis before they truly change. Pain, loss, or illness can jolt them out of their comfortable routine, shaking the body enough to allow the mind a chance to redirect it. But why wait for disaster? The choice to rewire your life can be made in a moment of clarity, in the recognition that if you do not act now, the same patterns will rule your future. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." Wasting life is not just idleness. It is repeating the same cycle until your time has slipped away. Think about how this cycle works. A single anxious thought sparks a physical reaction. Tension in your chest, a knot in your stomach. That reaction then convinces your brain the thought was real. One feeds the other until it's no longer clear which came first. At that point, you are no longer just experiencing stress. You have become stress. This is why change feels so unnatural. It is not just about breaking habits of action. It is about breaking habits of feeling. Stepping outside that pattern is uncomfortable, and that discomfort is precisely why so many avoid it. The body prefers the familiar, even if the familiar is suffering. The moment you decide to respond differently, to withhold blame, to stop repeating guilt, it feels wrong. An inner resistance whispers convincing lies. Start tomorrow. You can't change. This isn't who you are. But that voice is not truth. It is history. As Plato observed, the first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. The battle is not with the world, but with the gravitational pull of the familiar. Stress magnifies this cycle. Unlike an animal that returns to peace once danger has passed, we humans can summon fear with thought alone. A deer outruns a predator and returns to grazing. A human remembers an insult, replays it, and reactivates the entire stress response again and again. Our bodies, built for balance, cannot endure a permanent state of emergency. Epictetus reminded us, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Most of us are reacting to things that no longer exist, and in doing so, we create new wounds where none should be. Yet, if thoughts can make us sick, they can also make us well. The same imagination that chains us to the past can liberate us into the future. Your brain does not distinguish sharply between a vividly imagined action and a lived experience. When you rehearse a new way of being, when you feel the emotion of change before it arrives, you are planting seeds in the soil of your mind. Over time, those seeds grow into new habits, new beliefs, a new reality. Socrates declared, "The unexamined life is not worth living. To examine your life is to pull out the weeds of thought that no longer serve you and to make space for growth." Freedom is not found by chasing novelty outside yourself, but by rewiring what is within. Each time you catch the cycle, the same thought, the same feeling, the same reaction, you are given a chance to choose differently. Small choices made consistently begin to shift the program. Slowly, the unconscious becomes conscious, and what once felt like fate begins to feel like possibility. The Stoics did not promise a life of ease. They promised a life of resilience. And resilience comes from understanding that you are not the sum of your past emotions, but the author of your present ones. So the question remains, will you let yesterday's program run tomorrow's life, or will you take back the script? The answer lies not in grand gestures, but in quiet awareness, in the courage to pause, to choose, and to step into discomfort. Because on the other side of that discomfort lies freedom, and freedom has always been the true purpose of the examined life. Yet all too often we forget this power. We surrender to the body's old scripts, rehearsing yesterday's feelings as if they were inevitable truths. This emotional loop thrives because it is self-rewarding. Every feeling carries its own chemistry. The body becomes addicted to the familiar cocktail of its own stress hormones. And though it is a poison, it feels like home. To break free is not only to resist the thought, but to endure the withdrawal from the emotion itself. This is why so many return to old habits, even when they know better. The body craves what it knows, even if what it knows is suffering. It whispers that discomfort is danger, when in reality, discomfort is the very doorway to freedom. The imagination, however, is not only a prison, it is also the key. The same mind that replays fear can also rehearse courage. The same body that memorized sorrow can be taught to feel joy. When you close your eyes and vividly picture a future self, calm, strong, unshaken, the brain begins to build the pathways as if this were already true. Slowly, the loop changes direction. Instead of fear fueling anxiety, hope fuels action. Instead of doubt confirming weakness, vision confirms strength. The imagination is not the enemy. It is the soil where both weeds and flowers grow, and your attention is what decides which will thrive. This process demands patience. Loops practiced for years will not dissolve overnight, but each time you catch the cycle in motion, you weaken its hold. Notice the fearful thought, feel the surge of anxiety, and instead of letting the body confirm the lie, breathe and remind yourself, this is memory, not reality. As Socrates once said, the secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. You do not break the loop by wrestling with it. You break it by redirecting your focus, by teaching the body new emotions until the old ones fade from disuse. The emotional loop can feel like a cage, but it is not built of steel. It is built of habit, and habits can be changed. With awareness, practice, and the courage to endure discomfort, you can step outside the cycle and begin to live as someone new. And when that happens, the same imagination that once trapped you becomes the very force that sets you free. The idea of change is always inspiring, but the moment we try to live it, resistance appears like a shadow at our heels. You decide on a new path, even a small one, and immediately the body protests. The heart races, the stomach tightens, the mind fills with doubt. Whispers surface almost instantly. This doesn't feel right. Start tomorrow. You'll never change. Those words feel convincing, but they are not truth. They are echoes of the past. This is why so many people remain stuck, repeating the same patterns year after year. The body has been conditioned to treat the unfamiliar as unsafe, even when the familiar is misery. Think of it, staying in a toxic relationship can feel easier than leaving. Clinging to unhealthy habits feels more comfortable than building new ones. The mind dreams of change, but the body clings to routine because it trusts what it knows, not what it hopes for. Marcus Aurelius once said, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." To never step into the unknown is to never truly live. Yet resistance persuades us to mistake survival for life. The power of resistance lies in its disguise. It doesn't scream, it whispers. It speaks in rationalizations that feel harmless. You're too tired today. The timing isn't right. Maybe when you feel more prepared. These excuses don't sound like sabotage, but they quietly delay action, sometimes for years. As Seneca noted, while we are postponing, life speeds by. Resistance thrives on postponement. It doesn't need to defeat you in one moment. It only needs to convince you to wait again and again until the chance for change slips away. And yet, every moment of resistance holds a choice. You can surrender to the familiar, or you can step into the unknown and endure the discomfort that comes with it. But discomfort is not the enemy. Discomfort is the evidence that you are moving beyond the boundaries of your old self. As Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. The habit of resisting discomfort leads to stagnation. The habit of facing it creates excellence. Each small victory over resistance rewires the body, teaching it to trust what once felt unsafe. But the body does not give up easily. The longer you have lived a certain way, the louder resistance becomes when you try to shift. Old emotions rise to the surface: guilt, shame, fear. They rally together to pull you back into the familiar. It feels as though you are betraying yourself, but in truth, you are only betraying the version of yourself that has kept you small. Think of resistance as the threshold guardian. In every myth, the hero encounters a gatekeeper before stepping into a new world. That figure exists to test the hero's resolve, to ensure they truly want the transformation ahead. Resistance is your inner gatekeeper. Its job is not to destroy you, but to challenge your determination. If you recognize it for what it is, you stop mistaking it for truth. Instead, you see it as a sign that you are moving in the right direction, a sign that growth is near. The paradox of resistance is that it often grows strongest just before a breakthrough. When you are closest to change, the pull of the familiar feels most intense. The body begs to return to what it knows. The mind invents reasons to stop. But if you can endure this moment, if you can breathe through the panic, quiet the excuses, and take even a single step forward, the hold of resistance weakens. Each time you push past it, the unknown becomes less threatening, and the familiar loses its power. Over time, what once felt impossible begins to feel natural. The new becomes familiar, and resistance fades, but it never disappears completely. At each new stage of growth, it will return, whispering again, testing again. That is not failure. That is life. The work of change is not about eliminating resistance, but about building the strength to move forward, even when it appears. In this way, resistance transforms from an enemy into a teacher, reminding you that every step into the unknown is a step toward becoming more than you were before. So the next time you hear that whisper telling you to wait, to quit, or to stay where you are, recognize it for what it is. The voice of your past, trying to protect itself. You are not that past anymore. You are the possibility of what comes next. And the moment you choose to act despite resistance, you reclaim your freedom and step into the life that was waiting for you all along. Stress was never meant to be a permanent companion. In nature, it is a short burst of energy, a survival tool designed for moments of danger. Picture a deer pursued by wolves. Its body floods with adrenaline, every muscle primed for flight. When it escapes, the event is over. The deer returns to grazing, its body restored to balance. That is how the stress response was designed, temporary, purposeful, and then released. But we humans have complicated this elegant design. Unlike the deer, we do not need a predator to trigger stress. A single thought, an old argument replayed in the mind, a memory of failure, can activate the same survival response. The body does not know the difference between a real danger and an imagined threat. And so, many of us live in emergency mode not for minutes, but for days, weeks, and even years. This constant state of alert may feel ordinary because it has become familiar, but it is anything but natural. No system can survive in crisis mode forever. When the body is flooded with stress hormones, the immune system weakens, digestion falters, and sleep loses its depth. The very functions that keep us healthy are sacrificed for the illusion of survival. As Marcus Aurelius observed, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. The weight of stress comes not from the world alone, but from the meaning we give our thoughts. We choose, often unconsciously, to live as if the danger never ends. And when danger never ends, life itself begins to shrink. Instead of enjoying moments of peace, we scan for problems. Instead of resting in the present, we anticipate the next crisis. This is why people wake up already tense, why their shoulders ache by evening, why their nights are restless. They are living in a body convinced it must always be ready to fight or run. The Stoics called us to live in accordance with nature, but there is nothing natural about a body locked in permanent combat with itself. Seneca warned, "He suffers more than necessary who suffers before it is necessary." Stress makes us suffer not only during real hardship, but in anticipation of hardships that may never come. Think of how often stress arises not from what is happening now, but from rehearsals of what might happen. You remember a conflict, and your body relives it. You imagine an argument, and your body prepares as if the words were already spoken. Carl Jung once observed, "Neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering." Much of our modern stress is exactly this. Suffering created to fill the silence, a reaction to imagined threats while the real challenges of life go unattended. Over time, stress becomes more than a reaction. It becomes an identity. People describe themselves as anxious, overwhelmed, burnt out, as if these states are permanent labels instead of temporary imbalances. This identification makes escape even harder. When the mind believes it is stress, the body complies, the cycle tightens, and emergency mode becomes the default. Epictetus reminded us, it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. The judgments we place upon our thoughts determine whether we suffer once or suffer endlessly. And yet, though stress feels like an enemy, it can serve as a teacher. It shows us where we are most vulnerable, where our expectations clash with reality, where our judgments distort the truth. If we pause to examine the thought that triggered it, we begin to see the gap between reality and our reaction. Aristotle said, "The energy of the mind is the essence of life. If that energy is consumed by stress, then life is drained of vitality. But if we redirect it from constant fear toward awareness, from judgment toward acceptance, life begins to restore itself. The path forward lies in choosing not to live as the deer who never stops running. Stress will always visit, but it does not have to own us. Nature intended for calm to follow chaos. The more we honor that rhythm, the stronger we become." The Stoics knew that peace comes not from eliminating difficulty, but from meeting it without losing ourselves. Stress may be a silent destroyer when left unexamined, but once understood, it becomes the signal that it is time to return to balance. So when stress next rises, Recognize it not as a command, but as a signal, not a destiny, but a choice. You can feed it with more fear, or you can pause, breathe, and allow the body to return to its natural state. The wolves you are running from exist mostly in your mind. And once you see that, you can stop running, step back into the present, and begin to live in the freedom that nature always intended. If the past feels heavy, it is because you are walking through a garden that has not been tended in years. Every grudge, every regret, every memory of failure is a weed that has been allowed to spread unchecked. The longer it stays, the deeper its roots grow, until the garden no longer reflects possibility, but only the shadows of what has been. To move forward, those roots must be pulled, not with anger or resentment, but with awareness. You see them for what they are, leftovers of a story that no longer serves you. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A man's life is what his thoughts make of it." If your thoughts are weeds, your life becomes overgrown. If they are seeds of strength, your life becomes a field of growth. The process begins not with planting new ideas, but with preparing the soil of the mind. You cannot sow fresh seeds while bitterness and self-pity still choke the ground. Awareness is the spade that breaks the soil open. It is noticing when old patterns return, when the mind clings to blame or replays wounds. It is refusing to water what you no longer wish to grow. This work can feel uncomfortable, because the familiar weeds often disguise themselves as identity. I am my anger. I am my failure. But as Carl Jung reminded us, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. The act of uprooting is the act of reclaiming choice, of refusing to let yesterday's identity dictate tomorrow's growth. Once the soil is cleared, planting begins, and what you plant matters. Each thought is a seed. Each vision of yourself is a seed. Each rehearsal of a different reaction is a seed. The brain does not sharply distinguish between imagination and lived experience. When you vividly picture yourself calm in a storm, patient in conflict, or confident in a challenge, your brain begins wiring pathways as if it were already true. The rehearsal becomes practice, and practice becomes nature. As Seneca observed, luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. Mental rehearsal is preparation. The more you practice being who you wish to be, the more ready you become when life offers you the chance to live it. But it is not enough to plant casually. Seeds require care, repetition, and patience. Just as weeds do not vanish in a single pull, old habits will return unless you remain watchful. The garden of the mind thrives on consistency. The beauty of this practice is that it transforms imagination from a source of fear into a source of freedom. Where imagination once replayed failures, it now becomes a stage for rehearsing strength, for living tomorrow before it arrives. Epictetus once wrote, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." This is the essence of planting the future, to decide in advance the person you wish to become, and then to live each day as practice toward that vision. But this requires patience with imperfection. Not every seed grows at once. Some mornings, the old weeds return, whispering that nothing has changed. This is natural. No garden transforms overnight. The discipline lies not in demanding immediate results, but in trusting that repetition will bear fruit. There will be setbacks, moments when the weeds of the past push through the soil again. But even this is part of the process. Every time you pull a weed, you strengthen your ability to grow. Over time, you notice the weeds less, because the seeds you planted are now blooming stronger. What once felt forced begins to feel natural. What once was effort becomes identity. In this way, planting the future is not a single act, but a lifelong practice. It is the daily decision to see yourself not as the product of your past, but as the gardener of your becoming. The past may be full of weeds, but the future is always fertile ground, waiting for you to plant something new. Freedom is a word that sounds beautiful, but living it is far more demanding than we often admit. Most people imagine freedom as the absence of obstacles, but the Stoics understood it differently. They knew true freedom was not about comfort, but about resilience. Not the absence of obstacles, but the mastery of oneself in the face of them. To rewire your brain is to accept that discomfort is part of the process, that growth requires stepping out of the familiar and into the unknown. This mastery begins with something deceptively simple: the refusal to let old emotional reactions rule your present. Think of how a single moment of anger or fear can shape an entire day. A passing frustration, repeated, becomes a bitter mood. That mood, indulged, hardens into a temperament. And in time, that temperament is mistaken for a trait. This is how identity is often formed, not through conscious choice, but through repeated surrender to reactions. As Seneca warned, "He who is brave is free." Bravery here means having the courage to shorten the grip of emotional storms and return quickly to balance. Of course, this work is not easy. The past clings tightly, whispering in the form of old habits and familiar pain. But as Carl Jung observed, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. To rewire your brain is to endure the discomfort of change, to sit with the unease that comes when you no longer give in to the emotions that once defined you. It is in those very moments of struggle that the brain learns a new way of being. Each time you resist the pull of the past, even for a few seconds longer than before, you carve a new path toward freedom. The work of freedom is not grand or dramatic. It is found in the smallest choices, repeated daily. Choosing not to react in anger when provoked, choosing to breathe before speaking, choosing to notice the voice of doubt without letting it decide your actions. Over time, these small acts accumulate, rewiring the brain to respond differently. To live forward means allowing the mind to guide the body instead of the other way around. It means creating a vision of who you wish to be, rehearsing it in thought, and then aligning your actions with that vision until it becomes your nature. And yet, freedom is never final. It is not a prize you win once and keep forever. It is a practice, renewed daily. Just as weeds return to an untended garden, old habits will try to creep back into the mind. The work of freedom is the work of vigilance, of noticing when you are slipping and choosing, again, to return to the present. Over time, these choices reshape the very architecture of your brain, until freedom feels less like effort and more like nature. So freedom, in the Stoic sense, is not comfort. It is not the absence of struggle. It is the ability to carry yourself through struggle without being broken by it. It is the resilience to feel pain without becoming it, to face uncertainty without collapsing into fear, and to remember the past without being chained to it. True freedom awakens the moment your mind ceases to pull your soul into the past, and instead begins to guide your body toward the future. And once you taste even a glimpse of this liberty, you realize it was never about escaping from life, but about finally inhabiting it as it was meant to be lived, with strength, with clarity, and with the courage to be fully awake. Freedom is not a destination waiting for you in the distance. It is born in the very instant you decide that the past will no longer be your master. Every thought you consciously direct, every emotion you learn to master, every habit you intentionally reshape, these are declarations of your strength, proving that you are more powerful than the conditioning that once held you captive. The Stoics reminded us that the true measure of a life is not found in its comfort, but in its resilience. Carry this truth with you, and you will come to see the future not as something to be feared, but as something you are actively creating, seed by seed, in this very moment. If these words resonate with you, we invite you to continue this journey of self-mastery and growth by exploring one of the suggested videos on your screen. Thank you for being a part of the Stoic Journal. Your path to freedom has only just begun.